Hi everybody. I call this presentation Order from Chaos, and what you're going to be doing, what I'll be walking you through, is the process of taking all the stuff that you've gathered through the brainstorming and reading activities we've been doing so far and imposing order on it. Up to this point, your primary goal in this exploratory essay has been the exploring part of it, and if you've been doing it right, you should have lots of stuff, lots of brainstorming ideas, and possibly contradictory ideas, things that you know aren't going to fit together in a final essay. At this stage, a genuine exploration will have you reading and writing and brainstorming any ideas, following any paths that come to mind to gather as much stuff as possible. Now what we're going to do is walk through the process of imposing some order on this mess so that what you actually present to readers is reader friendly. It's designed for them to read and understand it. First of all, before you start drafting, I want you to ask yourself a few questions. First of all, who is your audience going to be for this? Uh, Look at the scenario you've selected in the text. And again, as I say almost every time I talk to you, you've got to be reading the text very carefully in this course. For an online course especially, it's important because that is our lecture. I'm giving you here just a quick overview with a few tips. I'm not summarizing the entire chapter since you have that in front of you. Who is your audience and why should they care about what you've written? And how can you make them care? How can you interest them? How can you engage them? The samples of writing in our textbook, even though we've not discussed those in the class, provide great examples of writing that is designed at the same time that it explores the writer's individual perspectives, individual feelings, individual goals. It also is designed to reach out and engage an audience. So how can you make them care? Think about the common ground you might have with them. Think about ways of describing things so they're interesting. Think about a hook at the beginning of the essay that's going to draw them in. Think of ways to make them care about what you have to say. There's a wonderful table on page 138 of your text which arranges or suggests three possible arrangements for this essay. I want you to read that very carefully. Just to go over them very quickly, classifying ideas, you began this whole process, if you did it right, by generating research questions. One way to organize an exploratory essay is to list out those questions and share your responses. Now you have to do that in an interesting way. You still have to preview that in the introduction, summarize that in the conclusion, so that what you get is more than just a list of questions and answers. You want to make this interesting and engaging. If you've got multiple ideas, for example, if you're exploring two career options, you might compare and contrast those. And again, this is one of those modes you likely ran across in 111, the comparison-contrast essay. The reason we teach those modes is because they can be very useful tools in organizing writing, not just in academia, but really throughout your life. Finally, relating causes and effects. And the way this plays out in an exploratory essay is you can walk readers through your discovery process with you chronologically. I did this, discovered this, and then I did that. The only thing you want to do is make sure that you choose to tell the story that takes you most directly to the conclusions that you've drawn. In other words, don't describe every moment of your research beginning to end with all those false starts and side roads that you've gone down. Try to focus on what is going to concisely bring your exploration together. For your draft, then, think about how you might introduce your subject, and each of these prompts reflects one of those organizational styles. So join me on my journey. In other words, come along with me. This is that final cause and effect organizational style that we just talked about. In other words, you invite your readers to walk along with you through the exploration you've just gone through. I've got a few questions. Again, in your intro, you'll say more than this. You'll set up the question, set up the exploration, explain why it's important. But here you will then follow the structure of the essay, which has you naming the questions you got and sharing your answers. And then the final intro will lay out the multiple perspectives that you're going to be comparing and contrasting. So look at these. Each of these uses the introduction to set up the overall organization of the essay. That's a trick you'll want to hold on to throughout the course. The body then will share the results using whatever organizational mode that you've settled on up front. One thing to be very careful of is to make sure you glue things together for the readers. Each paragraph should be glued to the one before it somehow. Make sure when you're making major jumps in thought especially that readers can see clearly why each point comes where it does. If you're not sure why each point comes where it does, if you're struggling to write that transition, then maybe you need to rethink the organization of your essay. And finally, your conclusion, a few things that it can do, sum things up for your readers, present any final conclusions. If you've researched a career, what is your current feeling about that career, for example, and raise any lingering questions. You don't have to answer everything in this essay. It may be at the end of your exploration, you've still got questions. This can especially be the case with the personal belief essay. The goal of that is to have you really reflect on where your belief comes from, not in terms of your reasons for believing it, but rather what in your history, what in your biography, what in your experience inclines you to think the way you do about something. And a lot of times you will come up with theories. Maybe I believe people are fundamentally good because I grew up in a small town and I knew everybody, and you felt very safe with the people around you. Maybe if I'd grown up in a big city, or in a dangerous area of a city, or in a very unfriendly town, maybe I'd have different feelings about that. But that might not be, that's a theory. Maybe I have other theories I might want to raise in the conclusion without pursuing them in detail. Finally, conventions. If you are writing a letter, I want you to duck back to Appendix C and see what that should look like. This is really important. You really got to be in the habit of learning the rules of a genre before you write in it. So a letter is a genre of writing. It looks a specific way. It does not look like an essay. So if you're writing a letter, I want to make sure your letter looks like a letter. And that is it. I'm going to let it continue recording while I am talking to you, and then I'm going to cancel. I'm going to close out this presentation. As always, if you've got questions, ask them in the forums in the course, but try to enjoy the writing of this essay. You've done a lot of work to generate ideas. Now is your chance to pull them together and have some fun with it.